Fair warning that this video does talk about bodily fluids such as pus, as well as using a few visual aids to help clarify a few things, and that if you have a problem with medical anomalies such as sun blisters or that of pus-filled cysts, I would recommend you digest this video at your own pace. I'm not going to force it upon you, and if you want me to go into a longer video of other things we did on the island, except make medical mishaps that make us look like we just came fresh from Arkham Asylum, then just let me know. Alright, on with the story. In 2016, I went on a Boy Scout trip that's called High Adventure, and usually when people think about Boy Scouts, they have this very Norman Rockwell-esque picture of what a Boy Scout is. You know, uniforms always tucked in, going to church on Sunday, helping grannies cross the street, and selling popcorn at your local Walmart, only for one or two of them to be abducted by crack addicts to sell for plasma so that way they could buy more crack. But in reality, my troop was far from perfect, and well, due to the lack of brain cells, I believe we could have been one of the most dangerous organized units known to man. For over the years, I've seen everything from people being lit on fire to digging 15-foot holes with Vietnamese booby traps in the bottom, just for poops and giggles, as well as creating a fire that burned for so long that it created a smoke cloud so big that the National Forestry Service had to get involved and tag us as a potential wildfire hazard. Yeah, fun time. One of the things they always told us was that you had to accommodate your skin well for this trip, for you'd be out in the sun from sunrise to sunset, and you'd basically be the sun's bitch this entire trip if you didn't accommodate well to it. And while most of us accommodated, and I did my due diligence and did take care of my skin, I put on sunscreen as well as just kept myself covered most of the time. I wore like this very thin towel as a sort of wrap around myself, kind of like a poncho, and protected myself from the rays. And everyone thought I would be the worrisome one and get, caught really bad by the sun. By the end of the trip, though, I was fine. One guy, though, named Connor, didn't do so well. See, one morning Connor woke up and complained about his back being very sensitive, as well as it feeling like it was on fire and having very irritable back skin. So we slowly lifted up Connor's shirt to reveal the abhorrent nature of what his back had become. Turns out Connor had gotten what is called sun blisters, and if you've never had sun blisters, congratulations. They're a horrible thing to have. Sun blisters are the result of second-degree sunburn, and they happen deeper in the skin than, say, first-degree sunburn. They can also be a real hassle to deal with, for they could be very sensitive, and the ways that Connor's were, these were big, like the size of my hand big, scattered all around Connor's back, and they were filled to the brim with pus. So these were very sensitive things that had to be taken care of. Most people say to leave it to medical professionals, and yeah, I would assume so. This isn't something you want to mess around with, for if we even pop these, we're just going to be exposing his raw back to the elements. Last thing we want is to pop one of these and then get it all dirty. That's how you get infections, kids. That's not good. But when we brought this up with island staff, they basically said that it wasn't a big enough emergency to evacuate Connor off the island for, and that the really only protocols they had were for serious medical emergencies, like something they couldn't handle, like a foot being cut off, or someone being disemboweled, or a chest burster popping out of your chest. No, you know what, now that I think about it, they probably would just give you some Tums for the chest burster and tell you to enjoy the sun while you can. That's probably what they do. Let it be known that the scoutmaster at the time that I had was a school principal, nowhere near the medical profession, nor did they have any medical expertise. If we were given a chiropractor as a scoutmaster, or even some sketchy crack addict that does free kidney transplants outside of 7-Eleven, we would have been in better hands. But no, for this scouting trip we had the scoutmaster who was just a bona fide scholar of the subtle art of not giving a fuck. So he decides to take this entire roll of medical tape and wrap up Connor's body to the point where it looks like he's wearing an undershirt of just medical tape. It looked like something you'd wear under chainmail in some sort of MMORPG. But Connor's wound was dressed, I guess? His blisters were covered entirely in this medical tape, but anyone who's messed around with medical tape knows two things. A, it's adhesively strong, and that's because it's meant to keep out things like germs, dirt, water, any other grime that could infect your wounds or make it worse. And B, it's really, really hard to get off if you don't have like something like a band-aid underneath it. So if it sticks to your skin, it can be really hard to get off. And well, another thing about the medical profession that a lot of people know is that You're supposed to redress your wounds with fresh bandages every so often, just so you don't risk that of an infection. So we all looked at Connor and told him that eventually we had to redress his wounds, and he said that it would be better now than never. And so we all had to come up with a plan. We knew that there was one of two ways we could do this. Either A, the Brazilian wax way, and we just start ripping and tearing as fast as possible, knowing Connor's gonna be in pain the whole time, but at least it'd be over quickly. Or we do this the slow, methodical way and try to make this the least painful experience possible for him. Either way, there was no nirvana option where he was just going to be in a bountiful, joyful mood having this medical tape ripped off him. So we started with Connor's lower back where the blisters were smaller than the ones on his upper back. Remember I said they were about the size of my hand, filled up to the brim with pus. So as we ripped him off and we got to that first blister, we knew no matter what, Connor was screwed. For the first blister, under the slightest amount of tension from the medical tape, split open and spewed pus all over his back, taking off that little bit of skin that was the blister along with the medical tape. Yeah, it wasn't fun. So we knew that we had to hold Connor down and just started peeling off medical tape like there was no mañana. As we peeled off layer after layer after layer of medical tape, tearing off blister after blister after blister, even the big ones on Connor's upper back we tore off. And by the end of it, it was kind of like we had this shell of Connor's torso on the ground of medical tape. His back was as raw as a steak at that point. An uncooked steak looked more healthy than Connor's back. It looked so disease-ridden and disgusting that it was just ewy. His back was just covered in the gelatin pus that just kept leaking and oozing from the wounds he had on his back. And so as I look at like this shell of Connor's torso, you just see like these huge clumps of skin that are lining the back of it, because that's what the skin that was covering the blisters were. And that was probably the worst medical mishap I was ever a part of, because it was just so unnecessarily brutal. That's about it. See ya.